see it's 11 o'clock, so let's get started. We have lots to do today. We are kicking off, this is kind of our initial maiden voyage of connecting with colleagues, and our topic today is food preservation. I am going to be your moderator. I'm Vanessa Hoynes, and I am a family and community wellness agent in North Dakota for NDSU. I also serve on the national board as the Central Region Director. So welcome this morning or this afternoon or noon, whatever it might be for you. We are so excited to have so many people joining us today. We are recording this, so if you need to drop off, or if friends, members that you know couldn't join us, they can sure watch the video later. We also have plans to start a forum on our website to be able to continue this conversation of questions and answers that you might have all surrounding food preservation, because we know that in an hour we're only going to be just kind of scratching the surface and getting this conversation started. But let me tell you, we are so excited about this beginning this networking opportunity. Michelle Wright and I from the board have been working on this, and so Michelle, if you want to say a quick hello. Do you want to share anything about the conversation you have coming up later?
Yes, we're excited that you guys are a part of us and a part of this opportunity today. We look forward to seeing you again in July on the 16th, which is where we're going to talk about how we can connect with and serve those audiences that are often sometimes underserved. So we look forward to seeing you guys in July.
So be thinking about tips that you can share or questions that you might have about that topic. But without further ado, we want to get into our food preservation. And we have gotten some wonderful lists of questions from all of you. Fortunately, I was able to reach out to a North Central group that has been working in the area of food preservation together, kind of collectively working and bringing their resources together. And so I'm going to turn it over to Julie Garden Robinson and her crew, and they'll tell us a little bit more about their group, and then we'll dig right into our questions. But feel free to put questions in the chat if you have them, and we'll try and keep an eye on those. We might not get to all of them because we do have questions you shared earlier. And then also, if you would like to share something, please raise your hand or let us know that you would like to jump in. So Julie.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. As she said, I'm at North Dakota State University, and I'm also your Vice President for Awards and Recognition, so you've probably seen my name. I'm joined today by Susan Mills-Gray at the University of Missouri and Atina Rozan at Purdue, and we're really happy to be able to share some of the things we've been doing as a region. And one of the things we wanted to encourage you to do is to start creating your own regional collaborative. It's been very successful for us. So I'll ask for the next slide and just show you the states that are involved.
I'll try in here.
There we go. So these are all the states. The ones in red are the original states that formed a collaborative back in 2016. And now we have in blue the rest of the states. So we're really excited to have all of these states involved. And again, this is possible in every region of the US. And I will say that we received some grant funding from the NEA-FCS Foundation to develop a tool that hopefully will help other regions kind of learn from what we've learned and in our 5-year effort. And I'll turn it over to Atina to tell us a little more.
Thank you, Julie. So as Julie said, we began in 2016. We had a unique opportunity in which the program leaders in the North Central region were bringing together teams of educators and specialists on a variety of different topics. And for our team, it was the area of food safety. And so as we started with that initial support, one of the things that I think we want to make sure we convey to everyone today is beyond that initial support, we have done all of this with limited to actually, I guess, zero funding as we have moved forward. As our team has progressed and has developed, we've learned a lot from each other. And this past year, we took the opportunity to kind of assess ourselves and see what we all have learned and gained from this opportunity to work together. And so on the slide, you're going to see some quotes, and those quotes come directly from our members as we reflected back on some of our efforts in the past 4 years at that point. So as I said, we brought together in 2016, and for our particular area of food safety, we decided to help us move forward. We wanted to develop our goals and where we wanted to move forward. And so for that process, we developed a logic model to get us initially started. And for us, the first step was to develop an evaluation tool that could be utilized by all of our participating states in an effort to collectively put all of the impact that we were all doing in our individual states around the area of food preservation. We also knew that we needed to have a way to meet. We were meeting in person for the first 2 meetings, but beyond that, we needed to have a framework. And so for us, before we lived in the world of Zoom, our team lived in the world of Zoom on a monthly basis, sharing our information and developing those tools in those initial days of our team. It was also important that we had some leadership. And as our team has progressed over the years, that role has evolved over time. We started off with just one leader, if you will, that kind of coordinated our meetings and agendas and things along those lines. But we now have co-leaders because as we have got to doing more things, that burden is now spread amongst 2 people. And even here recently, we've broken into different subcommittees so that we can bring in different focus areas beyond just food preservation. We're looking at cottage foods and food entrepreneurs. And so we're trying to spread some of our efforts into some different areas of food safety as well. Also, one thing, if you are thinking, maybe your area of the United States, your region would like to formulate a team such as this, it's going to be important to have a way that you're going to organize your team's data, data in terms of, we had evaluation data, but your meeting minutes, opportunities that you might come up, maybe there's grants or any of that paperwork that your team's going to have. Since you're working across, many states, having a centralized place for that is going to be very handy. For us, utilizing an online platform such as Box has worked out really well so that all members have access to those materials. And one of our co-leaders was instrumental in getting that set up for us and helping to keep it cleaned up, I would say, as time goes on as well. So some of that leadership also comes in that form of keeping the team moving forward as well. And I'll turn it over to Susan to continue this conversation.
Got to unmute myself there. We found that working together, we've accomplished a lot more. And as you can see the comment, each state was doing food preservation their traditional way, and we've been able to expand that by sharing what we do, what we think we did best, and learning from each other from that. Atina and Julie have already indicated the fact that we all use the same evaluation tool. So all 12 states are using that same evaluation tool. We have one for our face-to-face workshops. We have one when we do it virtually. And so that is strong impact data. And so not only do we learn from each other, but we also learn how to do it better with each other. We've had we have some open discussions that are fairly controversial. And, I'll give you one example. We have developed a very, we think, a very good and solid working relationship with the Newell Corporation, who owns the Ball brand. And we've met with them multiple times and talked with them about, challenges that we have when dealing with consumers. But we have a discussion back and forth regarding, the Ball's dedication to checking all the things that they might have in the past. And so, our team has went back and forth. Are we all going to continue to use Ball as a recommended resource? Okay, some people think we should, some don't. So we're still working through those. And we have worked through multiple things. We're working on a statement piece for our 12 states right now regarding what's our recommendation for the right canning lid. Which one is the best lid? You know, because we constantly getting questions on reusable lids. So we do have lots of open dialogue. We have a lot of times when we don't always necessarily agree, and we work through it as a collective unit. We're very good at making sure that we utilize each other's strengths. As already been mentioned, we have one member that set up our box, and she keeps that all organized for us. Another example would be we tapped a 2-state newsletter that we've expanded to all 12 states now. So all 12 states are using the same consumer newsletter. We're just trying to build collective impact. And that's really been very important to us as we've moved forward. Now, Atina, if you go to our last slide, what we want to do today is we know you've submitted a lot of questions, and we're going to tell you right up front that we are not going to address specific food preservation questions. We got a lot of questions on, you know, how do you get a crisper pickle? We got questions on pre-cooking meats prior to pressure canning. We are going to address those. We have a plan worked out to do that. We will be addressing those, and they'll get posted. I believe if Will wants to share that, I think we're going to post that on Facebook. Is that right, Will?
Actually, we're going to post them on a forum.
In a forum, okay.
Yeah.
And so we just want to let you know that there were so many questions that came in that we wanted to look at maybe the big picture questions for this morning. And this is not us being the all-in authority. All of us on here are extension educators across the United States, and we really want it to be a dialogue. So Vanessa will moderate our questions, and Atina and Julie and I will probably take maybe what we would call the first stab at those, but we want everyone to feel free to speak up, put your comments in chat, raise your hand if you want to speak, because this is a discussion between us. This is not technically a webinar that we're doing for you. But just know that we value your input, and we look forward to this discussion. And Vanessa, we've had a really good question that popped into that chat.
Yes. So before we get started with the questions, why don't we go ahead and, Will, do you want to put up the poll? We have a quick poll just to give all of us an idea about the kind of experience we have in the room. So go ahead and please answer the question.
I think while people are answering that question, I think Julie and Atina and I can address this question that popped in following our few slides. You know, how are regional networks connected to the National Center for Home Food Preservation? And is there food safety specialists on our working group, or is it primarily agent supported and led? I'm going to start that, and then I'm going to throw that to Atina for her to add, and if Julie wants to add anything to that. We are not technically connected to the National Center for Home Food Preservation. I think that we started, as we said, in 2016, trying to figure out a way that we could show collective impact among the North Central extension states. But we work closely with National Center for Home Food Preservation. We've visited with Dr. Andrus many times, and I think most of you know, she recently retired in December. So we were concerned about a gap and how we could work together to fill that gap for our states. And yes, we have food safety specialists on our committee. That's their thing. Is this primarily agent supported or led? In the world that I work in University of Missouri, we don't use the term agent. We have off-campus faculty and we have on-campus faculty. So I would say that we have a combined membership. We have campus-based faculty who would what we might in Missouri call a state specialist, and we have local faculty that serve on our committee. Atina, Julie, anything you'd like to add to that before we move on?
I think you addressed that pretty good. I think as our team has grown, we probably, when we first started, we had more maybe of that specialist in. I think I may have been the only one that was maybe what you would consider field staff or an educator, an agent, whatever terms used in your particular state. But as we have added some additional states, I think we've got more of a balance in that arena at this point. And that's a good mix because it does allow, as Susan mentioned earlier, that open dialogue. So it does allow, if there's questions, we often will bounce questions off of each other. Can you help me address this? And having that mix does allow those answers, those questions to be answered in an efficient way.
And I'll just add that some are food safety researchers, so they're doing lab research. Others are exclusively education. So it's a really good group because it is such a mixed group and we're all doing different things, but we have a common mission.
Okay, well, as you might have noticed by the poll, we have experience in the room, and so we'll hope we'll be able to take advantage of that experience, not only from the folks who've been sharing already, but also within the whole conversation. We have several of our staff are very experienced in food preservation. So let's dig into these questions. The first question I'm gonna direct at Susan. So we had a question in regards to FCS agents and teaching canning in an online format. Do you have any thoughts?
Yes, in Missouri, how we handle that is we already have an online course, a consumer course, and how we handle that one is someone would take the online course and then it's followed up with a practice hands-on session with one of our off-campus faculty members. So that's one way we've been able to address online, and we've done that for a couple of years. During the pandemic, the world changed for all of us. So we did develop a way to teach online through Facebook Live. And there's still bugaboos. We're trying to figure out that. In the beginning, people were in their home kitchen and they were doing it, and it was very difficult to keep everybody at the same place. So you might, as the instructor, you might be ready to put a quick pack pickle in the steam canner, but your participants were lagging behind because they weren't sure and they didn't know how to do all that. So we continue to tweak that. But I know in Missouri, we are doing virtual education as it relates to that, but we are starting to move back to face-to-face with social distancing and mask, very small groups. Julie?
Well, we've been doing an ongoing webinar series called Field to Fork, and those are all archived. We bring in specialist researchers and so on. We also have done online videos, and right now I'm exploring some options that I have available on campus because we have what's called the HiFlex model. So it's like a giant Zoom screen. And so there's a lot of different ways that we can approach it. In parts of North Dakota, it's opened up quite a bit to face-to-face classes with social distancing. So lots of different things going on.
Now I see that Jackie Ogden has her hand up. Was this in regards to this question, or did you have a new question, Jackie? Or a new addition?
I just wanted to let all of you know that Dr. Tracy Brigman, who's the interim coordinator over at the National Center for Home Food Preservation, wanted to be on this session today. Unfortunately, already had a pre-commitment and asked for the recording. Also, I'm one of the other 4 FACS agents working with Dr. Brigman and taking calls for the National Food Preservation Center. And just wanted to let you know that things are continuing with, we so miss Elizabeth Andrus, but things are moving in a positive direction. Just thought the group might know that. She asked if I would make that announcement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you for letting us know, Jackie. Awesome. Okay, our next question, or does anybody else have anything to add to the online format of teaching
Yeah, I
food
put a little
preservation?
note in the chat. Does anybody have any, tell us what's going on in your state? I mean, remember, this is a conversation. It's not us with every answer.
Yeah, just raise your hand and then you will float to the top so I can see you. Okay. We'll go on to, yes, go ahead.
This is Janet Johnson in Alabama.
Yes, I see your hand is up.
And yes, I was going to jump in and I was like, let me follow directions. But anyway, like I said, the same thing that I've been kind of hearing. Generally, we always get face-to-face with hands-on, and then in the virtual, one of the things that we attempted to do as a team, because we are regional agents, and we generally serve anywhere from 6 to 11 counties. It's really crazy, hard anyway. But we did start doing virtual, and what we did was like a Zoom, like you're saying, and we actually had the agents do a demonstration, and people could Zoom in and watch that demonstration and have questions, and we would try to answer that way. And that's what we're kind of doing now until we go back to face-to-face. And right now we're attempting that same format, but doing what we call watch parties, where people might actually, who don't have that technology, because I said we're in Alabama, and I'm sure everybody know about the broadband thing. Anyway, doing watch parties where people who don't have that technology could possibly come into an office and Zoom, and we may have agents there who may be doing the demonstration, but again, with mask and social distance, because we do have to follow CDC as well as our university guidance.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing, Janet.
That's a great idea. I'm writing that down, Janet.
Gina, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, everybody. During the pandemic, we did do something similar to what Janet was talking about. We did some Zoom classes where agents demonstrated the different techniques. We did the whole gamut. We did everything from canning to freezing to drying. And this year we are utilizing the Moodle tool. So it will be more like people are taking an online class, and they can register, they can participate live, but then they can later watch the videos if they are in a situation where they're actually canning and need that reference, and we can upload all of our materials to that. And so we're really excited about that. I don't know if Hannah Fincham is still on here, but she's kind of leading that charge at our university, and we're really excited about it.
Great. Thank you, Gina. Okay, well, let's move on to the next question. We're wondering about creative approaches to engaging our master food preservation volunteers, especially during this more difficult time. How can we get them involved?
Well, I'm starting with this one, and I have to tell you that in Missouri, we do not have master food preservers because our legal counsel for the university considers it too high of risk because of the food safety liability. So I have nothing to add on this one. So I'm going to throw this to my two colleagues and for the rest of you to have input. So Julie?
We don't have master food preservers either, and primarily because it's staff. Takes a lot of staff to keep that up and running. So we haven't done that since my predecessor retired. Atina?
So at Purdue, we do have a program that's called Mastering Home Food Preservation. But the intent of that program is not that the participant is a master home food preserver after participating in the class. So kind of just as what Julie and Susan said, it's more that that's the title that we utilize. So it might be interesting to see, since we don't really have anything to add to this, but maybe if some of other membership on the call would have something to add to this.
Yeah, do other states have active master volunteers, master food preservation volunteers? Oh, Suzanne.
Good morning. This is Suzanne Dreesen from Minnesota. We have connected with our Master Gardener volunteer program because they have a system in place to manage their volunteers. So if they're a master gardener and have food preservation interest and experience, we do have an online course to train them to be like a food preservation consultant, that they could help answer questions, be at farmers markets, and do classes as well.
Okay, thank you. Andy, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, hi. So at Penn State, we have our master food preservers, but ours are, sometimes we call them unpaid program assistants, right? So they're not, unlike the master gardeners where people just join because they're interested and then they do this program, we recruit very specifically only in areas where geographic areas where we need assistance, where we either don't have educators or there's just a lot of interest and kind of take them for help. So right now what we're doing is we're having our volunteers help to write articles for our newsletter. They're still assisting clients with doing pressure canner gauge testing, and just kind of some of those other support activities until we come back to face-to-face where they do that. Earlier, if I could jump back to the previous question, I was not able to jump on. I was driving home from a program and listening on the Bluetooth. We've had a very successful series of webinars that we've done over Zoom where we use multiple cameras, and we actually gave a presentation through NEAFCS earlier, and I believe you can view that recording if you'd like. And so having that Zoom aspect, but then having extra cameras, up to 5 devices, so people can really see closely what's going on. We also present as a team, which kind of takes some of that load off and has been very successful. We've had a 300% increase in our participation in 2020 versus the previous season, just because it increases reach. And allows us to make impact to broader pockets, knowing that while we're increasing participation in some areas, other people also aren't able to join if they can't join on the computer. Thanks, Will. I saw he just put the link to the recording in there. Thanks, everybody.
Will is magical.
I just want to say that I participated in that series with Penn State, and it was excellent. I mean, it helped us in Missouri do some things better. I'm still not very good at multiple cameras, Andy. I need you to come here and help me with that.
Okay, we can work on that. Send me an email.
Me right over the edge. I'm just going to tell you that.
Okay. So check out that link that Will shared in the chat. All right, moving on. Canning evaluation tools and classes that are not hands-on. What are some tips that you can share about that, Susan?
Well, what we have developed for use in the North Central is that we add those questions that come from our face-to-face evaluation. What we do is we add the link for our online participants to use, and they can go directly to that survey. It's at Qualtrics and it's housed at North Dakota State. They go in and immediately fill that out. Another option is, of course, to use polling and ask those questions, and then the instructor has to record those answers. So it's much easier if you just send your participants and give them the direct link, but you can certainly also do it by polling while you're teaching online. And again, our face-to-face tool and our online mirror each other. Julie is our Qualtrics survey guru. So this is really her time to shine for many, many reasons, but she is our Qualtrics leader.
Overall, using an online system has worked really well. I think we've had close to 5,000 people complete our evaluation. We've published one article, and I think we should publish a second one, because after we used the survey, we found some things that we needed to tweak. So then we tweaked it and we tried the latest version that has worked for us for a couple years. But keep in mind, if you are going to do a survey and use that data in different ways, you also need to work through your institute's IRB process. And that was probably one of the more challenging things for us, because in some cases the paperwork was completely different depending on the state. But overall, that's worked really well, and using an online format where I can just filter out Missouri's responses and so on, that's allowed me to have a collective as well as an individual state data set.
And I can share, as an educator in a county, having used those evaluations, that they're very easy to use, and it's very easy to kind of hone into the specific questions that you were talking about, or the topics that you're really covering within your particular class that you're doing that day. Hope, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I wrote that question.
So we've got a really good question as it relates to IRB that we need to come back to.
Okay. I was curious, but I think Julie put in the chat earlier the published article about the survey. So that might answer my questions. I was more curious about what kinds of questions you ask in your survey, because I have one, and I'm hoping to share with others, because we're just trying to get our state together, collecting the same information. So, and then hopefully we might work with other states, but I'm working internally. And so I was just wondering what kinds of questions you ask, but that link that Julie posted might answer my questions. So,
okay. I don't know that, do we have our tool in the article? It's been a while since we've written that one, but I mean, I think we would share our evaluation tool with you. I can't imagine why we wouldn't. Hey, look, you remember I told you we had controversial discussions? Wait till you work through a 12-state process of coming up with one evaluation tool. I mean, just imagine how much fun we had with that one. We will tell you, we learned something, and Julie and Atina might want to join in on this one. When we did let's see, what year did we start? We started in 2018, didn't we?
2016.
No, I meant the first year we did our evaluation. Was it 17 or 18?
17, I believe.
We did it where you answered your questions about your knowledge post first. And then the second part of it was the same questions, but about what you knew prior. And we found very quickly that consumers were confused.
Yeah.
You could tell by their answers, they scored everything low on what they had learned. And then the second one where they were supposed to talk about prior, everything was high. We learned that we had to change that. We were trying to learn, or we were trying to use a more, a fairly new sequence on an evaluation tool. So we learned some things as we went through, and we've continued to refine, but I can't imagine why Hope we couldn't share that with you.
Oh, great. And I'm curious about what people are trying to measure. So thank you very much.
We're trying, in our world, we're trying to measure behavior change.
Yeah, okay.
Knowledge change, behavior change, and where they indicate what things they're going to do. Again, I'll turn that back over to Julie, because she's really our survey person.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
And actually, we probably need to bring that discussion back to the overall group as far as sharing of it. We are willing to share, but I want to have that approved by the overall 12-state group. I'm going to address also the IRB question. I've been on IRB for 20 years at North Dakota State. I don't know why, but if you're doing human subjects research, even if it's exempt, you do have to go through the process, especially if you plan to publish it or present it. That's how our IRB works. And if anyone ever wants to, visit with me about IRB, I have quite a lot of experience because of that, all those years. But anytime you are doing surveys with especially children or adults, you do need to make sure you're protecting their rights.
Julie, I just want to also add, because Purdue was a unique university in this whole discussion of IRB. If you're looking to work across state lines with not all IRBs are going to match up. There's different guidances. So while several of our states were able to just take what North Dakota, the efforts that Julie put forth, were able to take that and move forth, some of us had to go through other channels with our own university. So do be mindful of that as you're starting to work with other states, whether it's on food preservation or another topic under FCS, that you keep that in mind. It's not universal from state to state.
Okay. Well, great discussion. The next question really has to do with, there were lots of questions about in-person programs this year, and what are some great tips for offering hands-on food preservation workshops?
I'll chime in on this one if you want, Susan. Yeah. So, we really, for this question, it is a great question. And I think it's the $1,000,000 question that we all would like to have the answer for. But unfortunately, I think we all understand that we need to give consideration to what the concerns are maybe in our local areas. And so for this one, we kind of take the question back to the person asking it. And for all of us, just to be mindful of those considerations that need to be made at your local level as you move forward. And also, if you're working with a a group of staff. I've heard some people say, we're a regional team. Everyone on your team may not be willing. It may be that the state is opened up and you're able to do it, but I think consideration needs to be given to those that will be presenting. Are they comfortable to be working in that arena? Home food preservation classes, especially if you're doing any type of lab work or hands-on, there's going to be opportunities where folks are going to be close together. So that would need to be considered.
And I would echo that. We've been able to do in-person cooking classes with kids as well, and we did have to have them on separate tables, far apart, and just follow the protocol set by our university. So we're all different. Some states are open pretty much, others are not at all. So, pay attention to your COVID protocol.
So that's what we would tell you. You've got to follow your State Department of Health guidance, your university's guidance, and then what those local guidance are. I know in Missouri, we are very slowly moving back to some face-to-face, but I think we will see face-to-face food preservation workshops with very small numbers. I'm probably 4 or 5, because finding that kind of space to put somebody at multiple tables, where you have 5 or 6 people and everybody has to have their own table, is going to be a challenge for a lot of our off-campus faculty. So I look for much smaller numbers, and I really think we'll see a lot more virtual than we will face-to-face this year. Does anybody have any things to share from their state regarding moving back to face-to-face as it relates to food preservation?
I think there might be some opportunities to consider families or people who live together who could come together as kind of their pod and be able to work together, and having just a few small groups working together at a class might be something to consider. Because I know we've had parents and children come together to learn about food preservation, and so we can maybe just expand that. Any other thoughts about in-person?
This is Janet again, and kind of like what you said, with food preservation, depending on what you're doing, is very hard, because if you don't have individual tables that have a stove to put or even one of those, some of our offices, and like I said, in Alabama, we have an extension office in every county, but not all of them are created equal because it's based upon that county. So some don't even have kitchens, or they have women CECs who love those glass top stoves, and y'all know how that works. So we've actually even bought hot plates, but then you get into the power grid of you can't plug too many things in. It will, so and so that's why normally it's been that, like you said, that one collective and everybody do the hands-on, put it in the same pot. So it's going to definitely be difficult. And I think, like you said, small groups, which then kind of makes it, if you're traveling somewhere, you don't want to travel for 3 people. So I have a feeling that probably initially it might still be like the demo virtual type of thing. It's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head right there. Well, now we're going to open up the big questions of the summer. We're going to move into, of course, we have lots of people wondering about, will lids be available this summer? And so I'm going to turn it over to Julie.
That's $1 million question, Vanessa.
No kidding, I know.
From reports, I hear that sometimes lids are available in some areas, in certain stores, like maybe more unusual stores, hardware stores, and then they're quickly snapped up. It's really a supply chain issue, and to my knowledge, they aren't going to build more plants so that they can make more lids. We're just going to have to be kind of patient, I believe. I'm going to open it up to the rest of the participants. What have you heard about lids?
One thing that our network has heard from the Newell Corporation is that, for a long time they had a quality and a high level of surplus. And then 2020 happened, and it's going to take them some time to build that surplus back. So they're just trying to meet consumer demand right now. They don't have anything left in warehouses. So it might be not only 2021, but we could also see this shortage through 2022. And I think we have to help consumers be prepared for that. So that leads to the next question of the
Next
year.
question, right.
What do we use? What do we do with all these reusable lids that people are doing and all the crazy things that they're doing? And I know every one of us can tell some wild story. Like Julie made my jaw drop just earlier. We were getting ready for this morning, and she's now finding out that people are reusing commercial product lids to seal, like a top of a pickle jar that you unscrew. And so I think we're going to get probably bombarded with more questions about reusable lids and what's our stand on that, and what advice do we give folks? And we can tell you what our 12 states are leaning towards saying. We would be more than glad to share that, but I think we'd like to know how you all are planning on handling this $40,000 question.
Again, this is Janet in Alabama, and we sometimes we take on more than we're supposed to bear, you know, in the sense that it's not necessary, you know, we offer guidance, but it's not our responsibility to say you got to go here, because we don't have that. And kind of like what I just heard is, you know, it was a trend of last year because everybody was stuck at home and had nothing to do. And it was one of those where it was the trend. Okay, get out there, because the Hort team, because like I said, we're regional teams with specialties. And it's like, okay, so now that I have time, yeah, I'm going to backyard garden. And we had the issue with food because people were just concerned. And just because the infrastructure wasn't there, you know, it's like, okay, I got to grow my own food. Well, no, you don't. You just have to be a little bit patient. But I don't know what's going to happen, because like you said, right now I have a shed that my CEC probably is like, because somebody donated jars to me. They have to be clean. But, you know, I can't even get, because of everything is like, nobody can really come get the jars. So jars are not a problem. But yeah, the lid issue is going to be very, very tricky. And I don't even know if we can even get reusable lids, because it's not something we normally have pushed. But I am very interested in your take on the use of these reusable lids.
Well, and not only the reusable lids, but we also have kind of some different vendors who are coming out with lids too. And so what are some things that we can tell our consumers when they're coming and asking these questions about the different types of lids and what should they be planning to use?
Since
Julie,
we asked,
Julie, do you want to share just a few maybe highlights from our position statement that we're currently writing regarding recommended lids?
it would take me a while to pull up, but we are working on a handout that will be available.
Find it.
Would that be something that we could share on the forum?
Yep, eventually. But like I said, we are a 12-state group, so it's going to take a little bit to come up with our agreed upon statement. But I was just going to say, I am aware that Elizabeth Andress, before retiring, worked with a graduate student, and I believe it was on Tatler lids, and the student finished a thesis, and I was reading it, but I believe they only did one use of the Tatler lids. They seemed to work okay, but the idea with the reusable lids, of course, is that you reuse them. And from what we are seeing in our exploration for this particular handout, they can only be used up to 10 times, and you'd have to somehow mark those so that you only use them 10 times and then throw them away, because they would not be available to be used forever. So if Jackie is still on the call and she's with Georgia, maybe she has a comment about that research.
All I can say is yes, there was, but from the standpoint, I would have to go back and say where we are with that, because again, that was a research project, and I'm definitely taking notes for Tracy and for our team. And I will also say about lids in general, we have heard that supply is going to be more available in canning season. So I know we're monitoring it. So that's also on my list back with Tracy, because they have some additional information as well.
And
Yeah,
what
and I just want, oh, sorry. I was just going to add something here real quickly. You know, the reusable lids is definitely a kind of divided issue as maybe where we are on that. I think the message maybe that we can use at this point is to understand that yes, there is supply issues, but there is a supply out there. And one of the things that Newell has shared with us, there are lots of vendors, and I see that we have someone has mentioned that they've purchased some from online sources. You know, there's a concern there of maybe how credible those lids may be. So just use caution with that. So with that, keep in mind, it may be best to go to the manufacturer such as Newell's website and looking at where they are sourcing their lids. And that may be a message that you want to convey to your clients as well, because they do have on their website, I just looked at it this week, and it does have some major chains and then some smaller vendors that they're working with. So that may be more the message is, hey, these we know are going to be places to go buy creditable lids until maybe that other research can be completed.
Mm-hmm.
And what I ended up doing, because I was really short on lids, I could buy a whole box of jars with lids for the same price as the lids online. So I just went ahead and bought a couple more cases of jars with lids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, another issue that's going on is because of the pandemic, people were thinking things aren't going to be here. And so there's been a lot of stockpiling, as you all.
Right. And I think that might be the case even this season, because people are worried that they're not going to be there later. So they might clean off the shelves more quickly, even though they might not get used. But I think it's important to keep these issues in front of our consumer so that they recognize that there are issues and that they need to be aware. And then also keeping in mind that if they're ordering online, sometimes the prices are really exorbitant. And to let them know that that isn't the only option. That there probably will be a local retail that will be having them available soon.
And Vanessa, I'll just add one thing I always do when people are asking me about lids, even when I'm out at a restaurant or in the grocery store, because they might know me. I always remind them that there are many different ways to preserve foods. Mm-hmm. And freezing is certainly a viable option, especially, of course, you have to have the freezer space, but sometimes they forget that there are other options and you still get a high quality product.
Yeah, very, very good point. All right. Now, this question was also one that we have received from several folks. How do I know if a resource or a recipe is truly research-based, research-tested? You know, if a consumer calls in and they're looking for something specific, how can I help them out and lead them in the right direction?
Yeah, and so for that, and as far as our team, and I think all of our states agree on this, is, you know, the National Center is where we're going to provide or to find those recipes. You know, there are a lot of different sources, as we all know. There's different journals that you can find information in, and while those may be credible, there's different levels of credibility that might be associated with those. So maybe if you are going that route, ensuring that it is a journal source that's been vetted well, and not just somebody has put that out without having other eyes to review that. But the main source is the National Center for Home Food Preservation, because we know that the research has been done on those recipes.
Okay, great. Jackie.
I just wanted to mention from the center, remember that many of your states and extension networks are also on that center. And in taking some of those questions, I can tell you, we say safe, research-based. We know that all those sources there have been definitely reviewed, whether it be many of you have contributions there, as well as from other federal sources, and are so easy to preserve. I did want to also mention for video that the video series that was done originally by Elizabeth is still available. And I know in my state, even in my community and county, we show those on our television channel, and they do the rotation based on the season. And then we supply those recipes and materials where the consumer can definitely easily download.
Great idea for using those videos. Gina, you had your hand up.
I just wanted to mention, going back to the last point about the jar lids, that I think one message that we need to reiterate this year more than ever is only can what you need for a year. You know, you have to stockpile canned goods too, and that will certainly reduce the number of lids you're going to need. I had to go to the Ohio Amish country to find lids because they weren't freaking out like we were. And so they had plenty of lids, and
Can you send me some of those, Gina? Because there's none in Missouri.
$50 a pack. No, I'm just
going once, going twice. Yeah.
That's right. Let's do a little online bidding here. But you know, that's something that we talk about and we mention, but I think this year more than ever, we're going to really have to bring that message home.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point. Susan, you had your hand up.
Well, I just wanted to say, I alluded to this earlier. We've had a lot of discussion with Newell Corporation regarding some of their recipes, particularly, and I assume Julie and Atina got the new copy in the mail from them. Do you know what I'm talking about? That new book that they sent us, their revised book?
I haven't gotten it yet, but they told me it's on the way.
Mine came yesterday.
Okay.
So we've had a lot of discussions with them because they had a couple of recipes where they talked about using fresh lemon juice. And we were like, that, you know, we've told people for years you shouldn't do that. And they were like, oh, okay, well, we didn't think about that. You know, we just thought it was going to be more natural. We talked to them about some of our concerns. And I think Julie and Atina would both agree with me. They've been, we have a working relationship with two. One is one of their food scientists and one is their sort of the person in their marketing world. And they've listened to us and they've taken our advice. And so, but we do have some colleagues within our 12 state group that will not recommend ball. And then we have other states that still recommend ball. So when we're looking at, you know, research-based recipes, that might come down to a state by state decision.
Okay. Andy mentioned that in the new book, they also revised their sauerkraut procedure.
So I'll just add with our group, they get together with us sometimes a couple times a year, and we just have a very open discussion with them, and they share their new products, similar to what they do at our conference, but very open to hearing. They see Extension as their partner. I will add, though, that I don't think anyone has mentioned this. They used to have a call line, and now their calls are all sent to, was it the Philippines? So when you do call the ball 800 number or whatever it is, you're not getting someone necessarily that has all the background that they used to have. So
And I would share that our two contacts were very distressed over that.
Yes.
They were almost embarrassed to tell us that. And we think that they got 2 or 3 hours of training on how to answer those calls.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you might
Janet,
want to
I see you have your
ball hotline.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, because, you know, we consider, like you said, ball to be a serious authority, and, you know, outsourcing has gone crazy. But that was what you're talking about is kind of one of the things I wanted to ask, because we generally assume that, you know, ball, Mrs. Wages, you know, those producers of those products, that if they have a recipe, it's a tested recipe, because we make the assumption that they've gone through this to say, yes, this worked. So is that kind of inaccurate?
I
Well,
think,
go ahead.
I think from the ball perspective, at least the two that we are working with, I don't know that it's decisions that are maybe that's reflective of them. These are business decisions, and I think they're being made strictly from a business perspective, not from a science perspective. And it really puts them in a unique situation because I like's been shared, they've been very candid with us and very open. And I don't know that all the decisions that have been made and publications that have been put out have necessarily been something that they've agreed with.
Right.
They've been very upfront with us about that. And we also have to keep remembering that they keep getting bought out by larger corporations.
Yes.
They were Altrista for a while, and then Newell came in and bought Altrista. So the number of brands that Newell owns is massive. And so it's exactly what Atina said. For them, it's a bottom line kind of decision. It's not about food science. And our contacts are greatly distressed by that, because they understand ball should mean something. They understand ball has always meant something to consumers. And so I really think that they're listening and understanding and sharing with their company that the ball has to stand for something and align itself with the National Center for Home Food Preservation if they want to have credibility. That's what we keep telling them.
The other thing to keep in mind is whenever you're using a resource like ball that covers the entire nation versus maybe publications that you use in your state, those books don't do a very good job of reminding the consumer about doing their calculations for elevation. And so making sure that you keep that in mind and tell the consumers if they are using those cookbooks that they need to make that adjustment. Julie.
I was just going to say, I don't think any of us have talked about this yet, but it's really important for all extension to really be using the technology tools like social media and so on, because when people find a recipe from their friend on Pinterest or someone shares it on Facebook, who are they going to trust? Oh, my friend wouldn't hurt me. So I think it's important for all of us to be using those technology tools. That's one piece from the North Central region that Karen Blakesley at Kansas is particularly good at developing some of these social media pieces. I think we should look at maybe a national social media campaign with food preservation and just getting people to the safe resources, because what are they going to trust? Probably their friends more than us, unfortunately. So.
Okay, and we are getting down to really close to the end of our hour today. We do have a few more questions that we did not get a chance to get to. I know we are planning to create a forum on our website, and after our call is done today, you will be receiving an email that will include the recorded version of what we have done today, and then also an invitation and some information about how to get to the forum. And this will be a place where you can add more questions, you can help to answer questions, share things that you would like to share. So if the North Central group decides that they want to share their evaluation tool, sounds like there's really a lot of interest in that. So if the states are involved in that are willing, then that would be a place we could do that. I know one of the questions I was going to ask that we didn't get to were some of those frequently asked questions that you might have. And so if everybody would take a minute and put in the chat maybe a question that you have received that you weren't sure about the answer or would like some help with an answer, or even just a "can you believe they asked me this" kind of thing, because maybe we can add those questions also to the forum and be able to hit some of those specific ones. Like I think at the beginning we mentioned about crispy pickles or making jelly or making jam and my fruit is floating, some of those things. So if you have a question you want the group to help you out with, please share that in the chat and we will add them to our forum list.
And everyone take a look at Gina's comment about a statewide canning survey.
Yes.
We were below.
I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked.
No.
Because Pinterest is the final authority on everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, the other thing, your friend will also tell you the way that you really want it. You will tell you the answer you want to hear, where we tend to not give you that answer.
They want us to condone.
That's right.
Have you felt that way? I've done this. Is that okay? No, that's not okay. Oh, well, then they're done with me, or they want to argue with me. So I think we've all been in that. And if you're new to food preservation and you're new to this, it's an equal opportunity experience for someone to call and tell you what they've done. You share with them that that's not safe, and then they proceed to tell you why you're wrong. So if you think you're special, you're not. It's something we all go through. And, you know, I always train our off-campus faculty to simply say this: because consumers will argue with you and argue. I just tell them to simply stop it and say, you must decide how much risk you are willing to take for yourself, your family, and your friends. I've given you my professional advice. I appreciate it. Let me know if I can help you in any other way. Because if you're new to it and you don't realize how those conversations can go, a lot of our younger tenured faculty can really struggle with that. So that would be one thing that I would share with you for someone who's been doing this 38 years is you've got to learn how to stop that argument with them about what they want.
Susan, this is again Janet in Alabama. Like
Yes,
say,
Janet.
keeping it real, because you will get those people who, well, why can't I do this? Because, I can buy it in the store. And, our answer is if it's not tested, we cannot verify anything. And, it may sound flippant, but I tell them, if it didn't kill you, it worked. But if it killed you, it would not be recommended. Because people don't realize the seriousness of this sometimes.
Well, you have to also remind them that what we buy commercially, there are commercial procedures to that, and we can't replicate all that at home.
Exactly, and that be the thing that I tell them. That's a recipe they've tested, and we cannot test every little change in that recipe, and that's the problem. We don't have the funds to do anything like that.
Okay, I see Jackie had raised her hand.
Yeah, I just thought that especially if someone's new here, I just wanted you all to know that the 6th edition, Elizabeth made sure that 6th edition of So Easy to Preserve is available, and it is a great reference. And of course, at the National Center, the registration form is there. It's close to, I guess, 400 pages, but of all tested recipes, many of us have used, but for especially our new family consumer science agents to know that that is available through the National Center and UGA Extension. Thank you.
And in the chat, I saw where Andy had shared about the YouTube video on botulism out of Utah. If you've not seen that, I definitely would take a moment of your time to look that up. That is an excellent real life experience to share that you could, if you're in one of those difficult situations and someone would be willing to allow you to share that, definitely a good source.
Great point. Well, I see people are beginning to drop off, but thank you so much for joining us today. I hope, has this been helpful, and are you thinking this would be something that we should continue? Right now we're planning to do one each quarter, but we've actually had some folks step forward and say, you know what, we'd like to help moderate a topic. And so if there's something that you would like to offer up as an idea, let us know. You can contact Michelle or myself, and we'd be excited to hear about your ideas going forward. So be on the lookout for the information coming from our national, probably from Will, and we will share what we can within the forum. But thank you so much for joining us today. I think all of us learned something new about food preservation. And of course, I'd like to thank Julie, Susan, and Atina too for joining us today and helping us out with this conversation.